Hello world and welcome to another episode of Davetrippinon. And I've been doing a bunch of question and answer emails, but I wanted to today discuss something I thought was pretty relevant because I've got some good anecdotes from just recently that highlight an aspect of teaching over here, which usually isn't discussed or thought of at the forefront, which is sub-assignments. Sub-assignments are this. So when you work for, and this is specific to Interact, I don't know. In fact, I'm quite certain, say you were working for Peppy Kids Club, you wouldn't have this kind of thing happen to you. But if you come over here and you were working for Interact, this will probably most help with it, although maybe Jet has it as well. But I wanted to talk about my experience with sub-assignments and the sort of things that can happen, what you can expect, and maybe just trying to get a good perspective on them. So sub-assignments are related to something else that you have when you come over here to work, which is called work days. So when I get given my schedule for the year, like you can imagine, there's a whole bunch of variations in the schedules at the schools. So sometimes they have exams, sometimes they have events. There's all sorts of things that occasionally they won't require you to come into the school, but it's a standard work week. And so what Interact will give you is a work day. And that means that you are not required to go into the school that day, and you could potentially have a day off. Fantastic, a paid day off. That's what these amount to, potentially. But what can happen is if, say for example, a teacher has called in sick in some other area, and they say, they call in sick, and Interact's like, oh no, we need to cover this role. We got to get another teacher to go in there. They will look to the teachers who have a work day scheduled on that day to use you as the replacement for this person who's calling in sick. So yeah, it could be a day off for you, but if somebody calls in sick, then you can expect, or not expect, but it's very, very likely that you could receive a call that would have you going in on that work day to wherever it is that they need you to fill in. And they can call you. Usually this is the way it is they'll let you know far in advance, especially if it's if it's holidays. That's another reason. Say somebody is booked off holidays, they got to take off, and then they're like, okay, this person's taken off, and so during that time this person has a work day, we'll schedule them in. And so in that way you can get to know ahead of time. But as I've just mentioned, people call in sick, and that is usually spur of the moment, and so you can find out at the last minute that you might need to be covered on this, and it can really tug at the heartstrings. So this is the story I want to tell, just to give you an example of what could potentially happen to you. So I was in school on Wednesday. I was looking forward to the following day being a day off, and usually if they've not called you by the day of, you're off scot-free. You're going to get your day off. But like late in the day, probably an hour before I leave, they give me a call, and they said, you know what, we might have a sub-assignment for you, but we haven't spoken to the school yet, and so we're going to give you a call in about another hour or so, and we're going to let you know if we need you. And I was just like, yeah, of course, sure. Trying to keep perspective on it. You're pissed because you're like, man, I'm going to lose a day off. But of course, what you signed up for. You should just be grateful that in the other circumstances that you get a day off. So it's like, no problem. About an hour and a half goes by. And I was like, okay, this is getting a little more aggravating, because I'd like to know, not spend my whole night wondering if I have the day on or off. I can accept one, I just need to know what it is. And so I gave them a call, and they said, we still don't know yet. We're sorry about that. And I said, okay, sure, I'll just wait for the call. And so I drive home from school, and by the time I pull into my house, I finally get a call. I finally took my phone off silent so I could remember to do this. And I get the call, I pick up the phone, and they said, Dave, they don't need you. And so you're going to get the day off tomorrow after all. But please be aware, it is still a work day. And I said, no problem. There's no way that this can go bad now. I was feeling like, oh no, I got to have a work day, but whatever. And that work day, it was going to be an hour-long drive. That's another thing. They can range in great distance from how far you have to drive. When I go to my schools normally, I'm looking at something like, call it a 15-minute drive. You can have to drive much, much farther than that. In this case, it was going to be about an hour that I would have to drive to go to this thing. And yeah, so I'm elated. I find out that I don't have it. I was like, you know, I'm not going to lie. I said to the woman on the phone, I said, that's kind of cool because I'd like to have the day off. And she was laughing, you know, like, oh yeah, no problem, no problem. And so I get in and I start making dinner. And no sooner do I start making dinner, but I look down at my phone and I've got an email and I open it and it says, oh, we actually do have a sub-assignment for you. And this time it's in Funabashi. And I check how far away Funabashi is. Funabashi is 2.5 hours away. So where the first one was 1 hour, now this other one is 2.5 hours. And they've done this whole, you're working, you're not working, you're working, you're not working. And they gave me a call, and she was almost like laughing on the phone because this is like a little ridiculous, all this like back and forth that's happening. And she said, we actually do have an assignment for you. And I didn't get upset. I mean, I'm frustrated in my head. I'm like, man, stop jerking me around. But again, I guess almost why I'm trying to make this video is that in these moments where you might grow frustrated, remember that usually it's a paid holiday. And so if you have to go in, it's really not that bad. It's just the human nature that we want time off. You know, I could have done anything during that time. I got tons of things I like to work on, whether it be my YouTube channel or I won't go on about other stuff. But yeah, it's just this is an attempt. This is almost like a reminder to me, you know, to be open-minded about these sub-assignments that you get. And to keep them in perspective, even if this kind of thing happens, because I think it's very easy to grow frustrated and grow disenfranchised, grow angry with the system when you get, you know, told left and right different things and then told at the last moment and everything. But with perspective, you realize it's not that bad. I also have a vehicle, so I could drive to the thing as opposed to take the train transfers, which was like 5 train transfers or something like that. So I felt pretty good about this as well. And then I wanted to add on to this as well. It's usually kicking and screaming that I go to these sub-assignments because I'm like, oh man, could have been a day off. Now I'm going in to deal with these little hellions. But when I got to the school, like has happened at every other sub-assignment that I've gone on, the experience is amazing. I have yet to go to a school where I don't meet some wonderful, wonderful people. The teacher that I worked with was Psycho Sensei, and she was joking. She said, I'm a psycho, and I was like, that's funny, you know English well enough to make fun of yourself like that. And she was amazing, really open-minded, and she made every class go really, really smoothly. For me, it was another fun thing. I've talked about this in many, many videos, but whereas I usually teach at a junior high school, this was a elementary school, and if you take the energy down here of a junior high school, bring it up to like here times 10 for an elementary school, and also you just crank up how open-minded the kids are because they don't know to be afraid of anything yet. And so if they speak 2 words of English, they will speak that to me. If I speak Japanese to them, they won't like clam up and what is the foreigner doing trying to speak Japanese to me. You get really embraced at these elementary schools, especially as you're there for one day and you have all this novelty associated with you. It's like, oh, this new sensei, that's exciting. So I had an incredible time to top it off. You know, one where I'm like, oh, now I can't imagine not meeting these people now that I've gone in for it. But yeah, so the purpose of making this video is dual purpose reason is to say that this is the sort of thing that you can expect, is that it can get wild and random, and they might be calling you on and off and on and off and on and off. But if you, number 2, if you keep perspective on this, you realize it's not actually that big of a deal. And then hell, let's say number three, you might actually enjoy going on this sub-assignment in a way that you wouldn't have predicted before, especially if you work like I do at junior high schools and you go to elementary schools. It could be a really, really good time. So yeah, I thought it was a funny anecdote. I was like, oh man, I want to share that. Like, talk about, you know, like I say, messing with my heart, thinking I got a day off, a day on, a day off, a day on. But I thought, you know, other people could know about that as well, because when I first came, that was not something I believe was explicitly described to me that I would have these sub-assignments or how they necessarily worked. So I wanted to share that little bit of knowledge there. So if you have any other questions, thanks for checking out the video. Thanks for checking out my channel. I appreciate that. If you have any other questions you want to know about teaching in Japan, or recommend a book that I should review, because I do that as well, I put my email down below. Get a hold of me that way. I welcome that. And like, subscribe, and share. It helps me grow the channel, helps me reach more people. That's something I'm always trying to do. And until we meet again next time, world, thanks for tripping with Dave. Ciao for now. Peace.